All right, folks, we have a nice roundup of Switch 2 news for you today, including Nintendo filing a lawsuit again, but this time against an accessory maker that I'm actually going to be seeing this week. Pretty crazy when we think about everything that led up to the Nintendo Switch 2 and what the implications of this are. We also have an update on the scalping situation, an update on a game coming to Nintendo Switch 2 as well. So, look, we got to go ahead and dive in, and we're going to first start by reminding you that, hey, we are giving away two Nintendo Switch 2 Mario Kart World bundles right now. If you want to enter that, all you gotta do is click on the link down in the description or in the pinned comment. It is absolutely free to enter. I wish everyone luck. We'll be drawing the winner about 10 days or so before the Nintendo Switch 2 comes out. First, I just wanted to comment on this. I noticed it last night when we did a special late night stream that scalping for Switch 2 is a little out of hand. At first, I thought all of this was just during the panic situation. You're seeing the 1700, the 1600, the 1300. If you look at all those listings, those all happened around the time that pre-orders were delayed in the US. So people were buying these. These are actually sold units. People were buying these in the panic of concern of them not being available in the US or not being available for pre-order. So I thought that like this pricing here was just, a one-off thing for that panic time period that some people actually thought was worth buying. But as we scroll down, you're going to see more and more that are actually after the pre-order date. So we come down here, May 2nd, $1,000, April 24th, $1,000. There's a number that have sold around $1,000 that people are actually buying to get a Nintendo Switch 2 here in the United States. And I just wanted to let you guys know, you don't need to do this. There's going to be a bunch of them available day one at Target and Walmart. Target, you can literally order online for in-store pickup. Obviously, Walmart, you just walk in and buy one until they're sold out. And look, there could be other restock waves as well along the way. I think Walmart and GameStop are done with restock waves, but we still don't know with Best Buy and Target if there's going to be additional ones. We do know Walmart and Target will have units in store day one. So, look, please don't pay $1,000 for a Nintendo Switch 2. It's already an expensive device. And while I can't tell you how to spend your money, guys, there's even if you're going to go for scalper ones, there's some that are selling for like $600, which is only $100 more than MSRP for the actual bundle. So if you have to or feel like you need to go the scalper route, that to me is really the way to go. We also have an update on a story we talked about yesterday, and this update is very important because it's always important to correct factual-based mistakes that are made. And in this case, there was a mistake with the overall reporting. That wasn't really my fault, but just the fault of the outlets that reported it, because I mentioned about a Chrono Trigger remake, and I also mentioned that it's in foreign languages, and I'm reliant on others having the story right, and it turns out they did not have the story right. So as we go on here, it says, oops, Yuji Horii might not have leaked the massive remake news after all, and it sounds like the translator themselves is the one who made the mistake. So I want to be clear, it doesn't sound like it's the fans there that misinterpreted things. The translator, whose job it is to translate to the fans, looks like they messed up. I don't want that translator to lose their job, but it's a pretty big mistake to mess that up. So this is the second update here over on this Nintendo Life article, and it says, well, we did say to take it with a pinch of salt, but it looks like Yuji Horii may not have mentioned anything specifically about a potential Chrono Trigger remake. After all, Gemetsu, who's spotted by our sister site Push Square, has checked over all the footage and seems to have confirmed that nope, a Chrono Trigger remake was never mentioned by Yuji Horii himself, but rather brought up by the translator only. So you see this blue sky post here by Gemetsu, who says, late update, footage from the event is out, and Horii himself never actually said anything about a remake of Chrono Trigger, like at all. It was all the interpreter. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble. And we'll put a link again to the footage if you guys want. As the famous game over screen in Chrono Trigger says, but the future refused to change. We're still hopeful, though. Are you? It sounds like he did bring up Chrono Trigger, but he was bringing it up in context to just talking about things he's worked on in the past. And the translator somehow messed that up into meaning a remake. I don't know how the translator did that, but it does happen. Translation mistakes do happen. So there you go. The translator made a mistake, and it led to all the headlines. Obviously, we still really want a Chrono Trigger remake, but, also, we can't really do much about it. What we can do something about is at least talking about a lawsuit. If you guys remember, there was a lot of leaks around the Nintendo Switch 2, and despite being an extremely leaked platform, the games and the software and stuff didn't really leak, but the hardware did. Now, some of these leaks came directly out of things like manufacturing, and I'm sure Nintendo's still trying to hunt down who the hell Next Handheld is and where the hell he was when he took those photos. But that's not the leaks Nintendo's actually concerned with, because Even though those are legitimate leaks and are things Nintendo wants to have buttoned up at manufacturing, bottom line is no one was really profiting off of that. But one company was attempting to profit big time. Now, a lot of third-party accessory makers have been making, their accessories for Switch 2. In fact, one of them sent me things like this mock-up model right here. Now, I didn't get this mock-up model until after April 2nd, so the official dimensions were already out there. The system was already revealed. We already knew what it looked like. There's nothing really to steal the thunder from Nintendo at that point because, yeah, it's obvious to some. Like, you look at the back of this is not a legitimate Nintendo Switch 2, right? They're not even pretending that it is. It is very clearly just a mock-up for the purposes of, testing out their accessories and stuff. Nothing really wrong with that. What can be wrong, however, is if you are going to go to an event before Nintendo Switch 2 even reveals the damn system and not only advertise your products, but show off complete 3D models of the real Switch 2 with Nintendo's logos and branding. Oh, and on top of that, use it to try to sell products. And again, nothing wrong with third-party accessories existing, but there's a lot of no-nos that happened at an event called CES in 2025, earlier in January. So we have this lawsuit here filed by Nintendo. So it's United States District Court, Central District of California, Nintendo of America, Washington Corporation against Human Things, Inc., a.k.a. Genki, a Delaware corporation. That is where Genki operates out of in the U.S. Genki is actually a Japanese company. This is the U.S. branch going after them because this stuff primarily happened in the U.S. and happened in English. So they're going to take care of it here. So as you can see, it says like the plaintiff here. I will zoom out a little bit more. The plaintiff or Nintendo of America appearing through undersigned counsel alleges as follows. So they're talking about here all their copyrights and stuff they have around the Nintendo Switch, the Switch 2, the OLED, etc. But really the nuts and bolts of it comes down here. They talk about the trademarks they own. Obviously, they own the trademarks to all their consoles and all the logos and stuff. They're talking about how they have trademarks over the design and the logos and stuff. Yes, this is going to matter in a moment because it's something that Genki did that we're going to revisit. All right, so after Nintendo shows that they have proof that they have all the legitimate ownership over all this branding, we get down here to the actual complaints about Genki's actions generally, and this talks about what Genki does. Beginning at least as early as December 2024, defendant embarked upon a strategic campaign intended to capitalize on the public interest surrounding Nintendo's next-generation console. Nothing wrong with that, per se. It's what they did in January. So again, trying to talk about accessories you're going to make for an upcoming platform, that's not a problem. The problem is what they did in January. This is where Nintendo has made their stance that Genki, yeah, you messed up. So defendant began advertising that it gained unauthorized access to Nintendo's upcoming Switch 2 console, which had not yet been released or revealed publicly by Nintendo. That's right. Their damn CEO came out publicly in several interviews stating that Genki legitimately had a Nintendo Switch 2. So that's issue number one. Not a file with a render in it. The actual Switch 2. Genki claimed they had it. The defendant advertised that because of its unique access to a genuine unreleased Switch 2 console, it can manufacture gaming accessories that are compatible with the Switch 2. Further, Genki announced it would sell those allegedly compatible accessories contemporaneously with Nintendo's release of its console, so the same date, right? Following the initial claims of access to the genuine Switch 2 console, defendant's statements were contradictory and inconsistent, with defendant later stating that it was never in possession of the console, which happened after their booth got shut down at CES. That's right, their booth lasted like a day and a half and got completely shut down. So kind of funny that the story changed after the booth was shut down. Anyways, the defendant has since maintained its representation to consumers that its accessories will be compatible for the Switch 2's console upon the console's release, which again, if they don't have a legitimate console, they can't necessarily guarantee that compatibility. They can say, hey, you can buy our products and maybe it works with Switch 2, but you can't guarantee it because if you don't have access to the real thing. So ensuring compatibility to the defendant's accessories would not be possible unless and until the defendant has access to the Switch 2 console. So they're arguing, hey, you can't guarantee your accessories work. You can sell them. We can't stop that. But you can't be like guaranteeing compatibility. More like we believe or we feel or we think. Wording really matters, especially when you're claiming you had illegal access to the Switch 2 console. All right. So it says, obviously, this couldn't be possible unless they had access to the Switch 2 console or proprietary technical specifications, neither of which Nintendo provided and are authorized to provide to the defendant. Therefore, either the defendant is not in possession of a genuine console and thus cannot claim compatibility with enough certainty to make its advertising claims in good faith, or the defendant unlawfully or illicitly obtained an authentic Nintendo Switch 2 or proprietary technical information about the Switch 2 prior to the console's release to the public. Additionally, the defendant has used the Nintendo Switch, and this is the real big gotcha, right? The defendant has used Nintendo Switch marks in connection with the marketing and promotion of its unauthorized Switch 2 accessories. They used Nintendo's official logos. Oh, man. So this obviously misleads customers into believing that it offers functional, authentic, and authorized Nintendo Switch 2 products. That's right. When you start to use Nintendo's own logos, they hadn't even revealed publicly yet, you're starting to create a brand association to Nintendo. And they were doing this in January at a live event. Genki's wrongful actions began in December of 2024 when they first began promoting its accessories for the then high confidential, unrevealed, and unannounced Switch 2. They attempted to connect with the GameStop CEO Ryan Cohen to discuss the launch of Switch 2 accessories Genki was working on. Okay. But that's when they're claiming the beginning of the wrongdoings happened. But really, things came to a head in January. You can see here some DMs they show. Send me a DM with your ID and the issue. Post has been limited. DM'd you. Would love to work with some of the Switch 2 launch accessories. Again, they're just showing proof that Genki was doing some potentially shady things back then. And then not just doing it, trying to get a hold of retailers to help sell their products. On January 1st, 2025, Genki's exhibitor page went live for the 2025 Consumer Electronics Show, publicizing Genki's intention to host a booth media briefing on January 7th, in which it offered to discuss any information about the not yet announced Switch 2. Defendant may as well have stuff defendant making for it. And that is true. We talked about this. We covered this, right? This was a huge deal. Genki was about to reveal things that had not been revealed publicly about Switch 2. At CES, Genki demoed and promoted unauthorized purported mock-ups and renderings of the Nintendo Switch 2 and its accessories. Further, Genki presented at least 2 unauthorized 3D printed mock-ups of the Switch 2 to reporters. Genki boasted its alleged early access to the unreleased console and allowed guests to hold and measure the mock-ups. At Genki's CES booth, Genki CEO Edward Tsai personally showed off a 3D printed mock-up and stated to different reporters that Genki had or had access to an authentic Switch 2 on which Genki based the mock-ups, renderings, and 3D printed mock-ups. Genki's representatives, including its CEO, also did multiple media interviews discussing their 8 accessories and purportedly confirming specific, highly confidential designs and functionality of the not yet announced Nintendo Switch 2. So, yeah. They also displayed a video at a CES booth showing a purported 3D render of the Switch 2, which it later also posted on its website. Genki included Nintendo's marks on its rendering of the Nintendo Switch 2 dock, including Nintendo's registered design mark shown in registration 5352230. Oh man, if you guys want to know what they're talking about, if you're genuinely curious what they're talking about, we actually showed this in a video. We're going to go over to Jake Randall, friend of the channel's YouTube. He's got a video here. This is what they're talking about. This render that they're showing right here. So they have like the Joy-Cons, right? And they get into the dock, okay? They're literally showing a full 3D render of their accessories on the Nintendo Switch 2. And yeah, they show the logo. The logo is really one of the big gotchas because that's a fully trademarked thing that they do not have permission to use, especially at a time. There it is. You see when they turn sideways? See when they turn sideways? That was the logo. That was the logo shot. So this is from Genki. They were showing this off literally publicly on January 7th. Pretty insane, while also claiming that they had access to the actual Nintendo Switch 2. This is a wild story. And the Jake Randall stuff, I brought it up for a reason. We're going to come back to that. So now we get to Genki's presentation and statements garnered significant attention from the media and public, resulting in confusion among consumers. Again, they're not blaming the media. They're blaming Genki for even doing this. So people were wondering about the validity of Genki's statements in association with Nintendo. The media, especially those having had direct contact with Genki at CES, promoted the impression that the 3D printed mock-ups were accurate replicas of the Nintendo Switch 2. Similarly, many consumers expressed belief that Genki 1 was sent a model of the Nintendo Switch 2 by Nintendo itself, or 2 received approval from Nintendo to see the new hardware for the purpose of developing accessories. The issue of whether or not Genki was an authorized accessory manufacturer was further debated throughout, and this is hilarious, the Nintendo Switch 2 Reddit community. Yes, the Nintendo Switch 2 Reddit community came up. Public discourse and confusion over Genki's announcements were so significant that on January 10th, 2025, Nintendo issued a statement to reporters about the incident, clarifying that the gaming hardware that Genki presented as Nintendo hardware at CES is unofficial and was not provided to the company by us. Nintendo already talked about this back in January. They were not happy. The same day that Nintendo issued its January 10th statement, Genki backtracked on its bold claims of early access to the console. In an interview, Genki representative stated that Genki never had access to an authentic pre-release model of the Nintendo Switch 2, and they posted a thread on X, formerly Twitter, retracting its statements. Instead, the representative claimed that Genki's models were based on an alleged, quote-unquote, leaked information in the industry. The interview with Twitter thread are attached as exhibits. Nevertheless, Genki continued to represent that its accessories would be compatible with the upcoming Switch 2. On January 11th, a news article published by the Game Post credited Genki with a rendering of the Switch 2 console reproduced below, featuring the official design mark and the full name of the console, which had still not been announced by Nintendo. And now you're starting to see where the issues arise. They effed around and found out. There's other claims in here about how cocky they've been about this. There's claims in here about the Genki Direct that they did the exact same day. The crazy thing about the Genki Direct is you see it advertised here. They have a screenshot comparing the Direct, their thing to the Nintendo Direct. You know what's really, really, really insane about that? Genki has since, we're going to get to Genki's comments, by the way. Genki has come out and talked about this. But the Genki Direct, they rebranded it after this lawsuit. They now call it the Genki Indirect. Like, they literally rebranded it after the lawsuit. They changed the thumbnail and everything. This is insane. This is utterly insane. And the reason we brought up Jake Randall, for those curious, is after this lawsuit came out, it happened yesterday, Genki came out and made this tweet. Shout out to Jake Randall for getting us hooked up with a unit at GameStop. By the way, GameStop didn't have any units yesterday. There was no way Genki could order a unit online from GameStop yesterday. So why is this tweet up right now? If you haven't secured your Switch 2, follow his account. They're trying to create a different pattern publicly that doesn't matter because this is happening after the lawsuit. And the funny thing is, earlier this year, they called Jake Randall a liar. So Genki is not batting well right now. Now, they did put out a statement. So we got to cover both sides. We have Nintendo's allegations. We have the obvious mountains of public evidence. And now we get to Genki's statement. A note from the Genki team. You may have seen that Nintendo recently filed a lawsuit against us. We're taking it seriously and working with legal counsel to respond thoughtfully. What we can say is this: Genki has always been an independent company focused on building innovative gaming accessories for the community we love. We're proud of the work we've done, and we stand by the quality and originality of our products. While we can't comment in detail, we're continuing preparations to fulfill orders and showcase our newest products at PAX East this week. We're grateful for the overwhelming support we've received so far. We'll share more when we can, but for now, we're staying focused on doing what we can do best, building gear for gamers, Team Genki. Basically, we're not denying that we did any of this stuff. Please buy our products. That's what that read like to me. So look, Genki is obviously in the wrong. I know a lot of accessory makers could arguably be in the wrong, but not so many of them were like so bold as Genki, not just to talk about their accessories publicly, but to go to an in-person event that Nintendo's own partner NVIDIA was part of and actually present models to the public and talk directly to media about it. That is like where the trouble comes in, because lots of companies, D-Brand and others, have been talking about accessories and maybe having access to a file that allows them to make those accessories, but none of them were being so bold as to go to public events, bringing things like mock-ups, and this is actually a better mock-up than Genki brought, showing off full 3D renders publicly of Nintendo's copyrighted, not just the system, but the actual logo and everything. Genki, they really did this to themselves. So I don't really feel bad for them, but that's the story as it stands today. I assume there'll probably be a settlement out of court at some point. Genki is not a tiny company. They have about 130 employees, but you know, could this be the end? Could Genki be done? I mean, they're still trying to be like, yeah, we know about the lawsuit. Please buy our stuff. So I don't know. I'm going to be talking to Genki a little bit. I'm not going to talk too much about the lawsuit because I don't want them to get cold feet, but I'm going to be talking to them at PAX East, and we'll see what happens there. It'll be hilarious if Nintendo announces they're at PAX East tomorrow because there's a lawsuit between them and they're in the same building. That would be funny. All right. A couple more stories out there. One, we have Star Wars Outlaws is now a game key card. We kind of figured this was coming, that Ubisoft would do the whole game key card thing with the Switch 2 version. I'm assuming most third parties at this point are going to do it, but there you go. It's a game key card. I can put links if you guys want to pre-order that for some reason. I'm not a big proponent of the game key cards, but some of you guys don't mind buying them. I get it. They're resellable digital games. That's cool. One last update we have is about button mapping. People have been wondering about how there's like individual game button mapping for all the the Switch games, the Switch 2 games on Switch 2. How about the NSO service, especially like the N64, where you might want per game button mapping? Well, on Nintendo's official website, it says new ways to enjoy the N64 games. You'll find new features for you in the N64 Nintendo Classics app on Switch 2. So this is specific to Switch 2. These include a new CRT filter to add a retro feel to your games, button remapping for each game's controls, and the rewind feature in case you want to turn back time and undo a mistake. All of these are exclusive to the N64 app on Switch 2, probably taking advantage of the increased RAM and all of that available to use from the operating system. So there you go. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to have that added to Switch 2. That being said, folks, let me know what you think about this down below. Obviously, we have our really big story today, surrounded by some smaller ones, but give me your thoughts because, oh man, this is all, oh man. You know, when you F around and find out, Nintendo has a lot of lawsuits out there. This is one of the ones that it's like, it's really hard to take Genki's side. They went to a public event. They brought mock-ups. They showed full 3D renders. They boldly told media they have it. After Nintendo comes out and slams them saying, hey, we never sent you one, then they start to backtrack. And now that now you have a lawsuit coming, so now we're going to say, oh, well, thanks to Jake Randall, we're able to get a pre-order. I don't know what is happening. Genki is wilding right now. All I know is can't wait to see their Switch 2 accessories at PAX East. Can't wait to bust out my mock-up and be like, hey, remember when you guys got sued for something like this? Well, maybe you should have had something like that on the back and not made it such an official damn showcase. Anyways, guys, I am the Robot Dance from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.